think of when you think of Jell-O? Hospital food? School lunch? The 1950s? If you grew up in Utah where it's the official state snack, maybe your mom's kitchen after school. Patented in 1897 by industrialist Pearl Bixby Waite, Jell-O is a curious icon of American culture. From the adorable and unfortunate Bill Cosby ads of the 1980s to the jiggly salads that defined the dinner tables of the early 20th century, Jell-O might be considered tacky, but it is inescapably us. But where did this stuff even come from? How did it become so emblematic of Americana that little packets of Jell-O were once handed out to new immigrants at Ellis Island? Who figured out that we could eat gelatin in the first place? And why on earth did anyone ever think that combining lime Jell-O, tuna fish, and mayonnaise in the same meal was a good idea? One thing that's clear from studying food history is that fast food and convenience foods, in general, are not exactly a new thing. We love the idea that this is a recent problem, but cheap, quick, questionably nutritious food businesses have existed and thrived on the poor and disenfranchised forever. In America, the processed, shelf-stable foods that have become symbols of our corporate economic dominance all rose to prominence in the years surrounding the Great Depression. While people have technically known about gelatin since at least the 1400s, when it was used as a preservative and in savory dishes like aspics, the roots of those elaborate Jell-O molds your great Aunt Helen insisted on serving can be found at the Napoleonic court. Because of the exceptionally morally complicated miracle of our modern industrial food system, you or I can just open a packet and make gelatin in a matter of minutes. We can even buy Jell-O pre-made in the supermarket. But if you were a cook tasked with making gelatin before the Industrial Revolution, you were signing up for multiple days of hard labor. Not to mention some intense smells. Plus, you needed a lot of meat and ice to make just a little gelatin, so it was extraordinarily expensive. In 1747, London cookbook author Hannah Glass described the first day of the arduous process like this. Take out the great bones of 4 calves' feet and put the feet into a pot with 10 quarts of water, 3 ounces of hartshorn, 3 ounces of isinglass, a nutmeg quartered, 4 blades of mace. Then, boil this till it comes to 2 quarts and strain it through a flannel bag. This, well, sucked. Bad times had by all except the super rich. Nothing familiar about that. Huzzah! But when you're the goddamn Emperor of France, you are super rich. So you, if you happen to be Napoleon Bonaparte, pull out all the stops. You hire Marie-Antoine Carême and a fleet of servants for him to command. Carême, who's often called the first celebrity chef, rose to stardom by completely dazzling the European upper classes with his over-the-top banquets. You think fancy food looks ridiculous today? Yeah, molecular gastronomists have nothing on this guy. Carême was famous for serving upwards of 100 individual dishes at his most impressive feasts. Each plate was more fantastical than the last. Seriously, look at this stuff. It barely resembles food. His desserts, the stars of the show, were absurdly gorgeous architectural marvels made from sugar, marzipan, and yes, gelatin. And like I said, those jellies were especially flashy edible status symbols. Carême's jellies were often entirely clear, or dyed bright, striking colors, molded into elaborate shapes, and adorned with layers of expensive fruits and spices. People were gobsmacked by them. Think about it. Taking something that tastes like cow's feet and making it taste like, say, strawberries and champagne is no small feat. So jellies became the hottest thing throughout Europe and America. They stayed that way for about 200 years. New York socialites showed off the size of their households by having fleets of servants make tremulous gelatin desserts that seemed to sparkle in the candlelight. Famous Francophile Thomas Jefferson was a fan, and his enslaved kitchen staff, notably James Hemmings, served guests wine jelly. In England, jelly desserts were so popular that
the Victorians used to put jellies down the centre of their tables, and then they would watch them wobble, and that would be a form of amusement during the meal.
Like titillation.
Yeah, exactly.
But even as the most refined folks around were politely giggling as they poked at their wobbly desserts, the Industrial Revolution was beginning all around them. And so, in 1845, Peter Cooper developed the first powdered gelatin. But powdered gelatin was so ridiculously simple to prepare that nobody trusted it. The astonishing stuff seemed nonsensical to American cooks used to backbreaking work. It didn't seem real, so it didn't sell. That is, until 1897, a full 52 years later, when a struggling laxative and cough syrup salesman with the incredible name of Pearl Bixby Waite figured out how to take all the characteristics that made jelly desserts popular with the ruling class and make them accessible to everyone else. Waite and his wife May added colors and fruit-flavored syrups to their gelatin powder. She gave it a snappy name, and after the trademark changed hands a couple of times, the new owners, the Genesee Pure Food Company, were off to the races. In 1904, they started handing out free cookbooks full of recipes for how to make Jell-O. At the time, this was a truly innovative marketing tactic, and people quickly began paying attention. Between this and ads featuring famous faces and adorable children, the brand was soon a household name. This meant that a dish that had always been exclusive was suddenly accessible to the masses. And on the rare occasions when that happens, you know everyone wants to try it. I could spend a long time here getting into how sugar was exalted by American consumers who had just discovered calories and thought that meant they understood nutrition. And how the professionalization of homemaking led housewives to straddle this weird line between embracing modern scientific convenience foods and wanting really badly to have everything they served seem incredibly impressive, and how Jell-O was used to make both legitimately delicious sounding desserts and utter culinary monstrosities. But we have got to move on. What's important to know here is that by being marketed as simultaneously affordable, low-effort, futuristic, dainty, and refined, Jell-O became the American housewife's dream food. In one of their most successful early marketing campaigns, everyone from attractive homemakers to George Washington to Native American tribespeople were pictured calling Jell-O America's favorite dessert. It became the brand's tagline for years. Remnants of this performative corporate patriotism are still seen in the sheet pan Jell-O American flags we make for the 4th of July. In the early 1900s, however, some people really believed that shit. This was partly due to Jell-O's ingenious advertising. Jell-O had lightning and a wobbly cultural model for decades. In the 1930s, smack dab in the middle of the Great Depression, Jell-O sponsored a whole radio show starring comedy star Jack Benny. They ran wildly racist ads that tapped into the period's unfortunate nostalgia for slavery. Later, they claimed that Jell-O made you lose weight, that it was the perfect vessel for leftover vegetables, and that it could make you wish you were an octopus. They marketed Jell-O as a miracle food, as an edible, accessible version of the aspirational American dream. Don't have any cash to take a vacation? You can buy a can of pineapple, some strawberry Jell-O, and make a Hawaiian sunset mold for dessert. Can't eat out for your anniversary? Well, if you find the right Jell-O mold, you can set a table that looks like it came right out of a magazine. Jell-O felt fancy, without actually being fancy. Knowing how much the kings and queens of the past had loved it, the greatest generation and their parents were told that they could combine Jell-O with anything and it would be great. Jell-O and tuna fish and cottage cheese? Diet food. Jell-O and shrimp and tomato juice? Delicious. Jell-O and cabbage and chives? Just add some vinegar, it'll be great. Jell-O and the convenient, affordable processed foods of its ilk were considered a modern miracle. By the 1950s, that magical perception was starting to fade, so they convinced consumers to pair it with whatever they had on hand. By the 1980s, Jell-O was so uncool that they tapped into their image of Americanness to market nostalgic desserts. They sold mixes for egg custard, tapioca, and rice pudding. By the time they were adults, the children of the baby boom, having grown up with privilege not so widely enjoyed by any culture in human history, looked at corporate culinary inventions like casseroles, Jell-O salads, and back-of-the-box recipes, and scoffed in disdain. They wanted their recipes to be French, their vegetables to at least seem like they came from an idyllic organic farm, and they were certainly not about to exalt something as mundane as Jell-O. Their fancy things really were fancy. Reaping the fruits of the labors of their more progressive-minded, thrifty parents led the boomers, or at least the ones who ended up in charge, to take widespread economic stability for granted. Over the years, our corporate giants repeated the historic irresponsibilities of the 1920s, prioritizing profit over people and setting the stage for the Great Recession of the 2000s, for the election of Donald Trump, and for our current unfathomable crisis. The American dream, this gorgeous idea of a chicken in every pot, could conceivably become a reality. But not without one hell of a sea change. This is the wealthiest country in the world, but without socialist frameworks to rein in capitalism, responsible tax policy that helps our most vulnerable citizens, providing free education and healthcare, and all kinds of other reasonable, empathetic things that ahistorical ideologues rail against, this country won't ever be a true land of the free. Despite their nostalgia for the 1950s, baby boomers grew up with many of these exact things. It made us, arguably, for a time, the greatest country in the world. We certainly are not that now. Food writers and marketers know the American dream is broken. They've been responding to it in their messaging for years. So, given that, the performative refinement of the Great Depression is especially relevant right now. Before she was canceled in May, viral recipe developer Alison Roman could largely credit her popularity to her skill at making the economical seem elevated. Various magazines heralded beans as the trendy food of the summer. Epicurious recently launched an entire section of their website devoted to being a smart cook. It's full of recipes for $10 dinners and plans for making a grocery budget. Oh, and restaurants are on their last legs too! Heck, Jell-O molds are even back. There are now whole sections of Instagram devoted to visually stunning jiggly artwork. These beautiful creations are studded with fresh fruit, edible flowers, and dyed in ombre patterns, just like the ones eaten by the aristocrats of the past. Some were being served instead of wedding cakes, back when weddings were a thing people did. So dig out your grandma's most interestingly shaped mold from the attic. Add a packet of Jell-O to your grocery order. And enjoy the saccharine sweet taste of kleptocratic capitalism.
Do you know what makes a little girl happy? Twinkling Jell-O. There's nothing quite.
Hey everybody! Thanks for tuning into this very intense rant of an episode. This is about where I was originally planning to implore you to please vote, but I'm afraid that ship has sailed. So instead, I'm including some links to places you can donate that are holding our democracy together. This country is fractured at its very core, and we're not going to recover, regardless of who's president, if we don't stay engaged in the next 4 years, and in the next couple of months. We will always need institutions like World Central Kitchen, Planned Parenthood, and the ACLU to hold our elected officials accountable and support our most vulnerable citizens. Anyway, that was the long-awaited third episode of Internet Food Historian. I really hope you liked it, and if you did, you should do all the usual things. Like, subscribe, comment with episode ideas, and check out my Patreon if you want to help me make more bitter videos like this. I'm hoping to have a new episode up next month. I'll also have a new essay published with Literary Hub very soon, and I hope you'll take a look at both. Food is always political. Lizzie.